Hi guys, welcome to Simply Scuba. So there are lots of different snorkels out there in the market, and some manufacturers make lots of snorkels, but what makes them all different? And that's the features that are put into them. So today I've got a few different snorkels just to look at the different features to help you make a more informed decision on buying your new snorkel. So let's take a closer look. Okay, so to start off with, we're going to take a look at the top of the snorkel. So for that, we've got 3 snorkels from Mares, and they're basically the same snorkel all the way up until you reach the very top of the snorkel. So on this one, for example, we have a very basic opening. So all this is a open tube that allows for fantastic airflow, but if any water does splash over it or you do submerge under the water, then that's going to flow and fill up the snorkel very quickly. So if you're not a fan of water in or around your mouth, especially salt water, then you can move onto a splash guard. So this snorkel, very similar at the top, except the very top of it, this is a splash guard. So it's modified so that if any water splashes sort of around it, then it's more likely going to deflect the wave away from the opening. No matter which direction it splashes over, it's going to deflect the water away from the opening that's actually down on the inside. But if you still submerge under the water, then it's going to start to fill up. So if you're thinking about diving under the water and you don't want the snorkel to fill up, then this is the sort of the third option. This is a dry top valve. So inside of here, again, we have that kind of wave deflector. So when you're on the surface, it's deflecting water away from you, but you can still have that sort of airway in here. But if you go under the surface of the water, then this gray section, this is a little float. So that's going to start to float upwards, and in turn, that blocks the top of the snorkel. So as you go under the water, it closes the top of the snorkel, water can't flow in. When you come back up to the surface, the float drops down, and then your snorkel is all clear. That way you don't have to sort of blow out all of the water in the snorkel, so it's very quick and very easy. They call it a dry top valve. Moving down, then we have the main body of the snorkel. So most snorkels are made out of a rigid material that doesn't really bend. This is great for keeping that airway open, but for storage and traveling, a flexible or at least a semi-rigid sort of alternative is often advised. So this is a semi-rigid snorkel. It has a little bit of flex in it, so if you're packing it in your bag and it gets kind of twisted or bent, it's fine, it bends back to its normal shape, and but it's not so floppy that if it's sort of going into a strong current, it's not going to bend or flex and close that airway. Other types, you can get very, very flexible snorkels. These are fantastic, especially for scuba divers. If you don't want that snorkel fixed to your mask throughout the entire dive, you can just wrap it up and stow it away in a pocket. They're nice and sort of flexible, and they pack down really, really small. But if you're just going to be snorkeling, then you might want a more of a semi-rigid snorkel. Moving down from that, then we have the snorkel keep. So the most basic snorkel keep is just a very simple little sort of hook. So that goes over your mask strap, you just hook that over and that's it. They can typically move up and down the snorkel, and you can take them off the snorkel as well if you just want to tuck it underneath your mask strap. But these are they're the cheapest, they're the very most basic sort of type. But try and look for one with a bit more of a hook down at the bottom, so that even if it goes up, it's less likely to come off the mask strap. The next type is kind of halfway in between. So this has, you'll notice this has quite a comprehensive hook at the lower section, but it's still fixed onto the snorkel. It pivots, so it's a bit more comfortable, and that sort of sits at the right angle on your head whilst you're actually snorkeling. But you do still have to hook it onto your mask and then unhook it between each dives if you want to store your mask in its box. Now the third type is actually removable. So this one, it comes in 2 parts. So one part stays attached to the snorkel. This section is left on your mask. So you actually thread that onto the mask strap. That cannot come off. That's a closed loop. And then they just slot together quick and easily for when you want to go snorkeling. So that's great so that you can pack your mask away in its box and pack your snorkel away sort of separately. This is very much the best type of snorkel keep, but if you just want to keep it basic, then you can just use a basic loop. Moving down the snorkel, then we have this section, which is the bend in the snorkel. So this one has a corrugated section, which is flexible. This is made out of silicone. This just means that that mouthpiece can be in at any angle, so it's nice and comfortable and you don't get any sort of jaw fatigue trying to hold it in your mouth by sort of biting down on the mouthpiece. It also means if you're scuba diving, you can be on the surface using your snorkel, sort of looking for the dive site. Then when you want to swap to your regulator, you simply let go and that drops away from your mouth and gives you lots of space to fit your regulator. The more basic ones are a fixed bend like this, so very simple and that's it. You do get a little bit of flexibility, but you do have to sort of hold that in your mouth and it does kind of have to be in the right position. So all snorkels are designed to fit on your left-hand side. So all of these, you'll notice that they have that kind of bend so that it fits more comfortably when it's sort of fitted on the left-hand side. If you try and fit it on the right-hand side, then it's bent the wrong direction. The purge valve is facing upwards instead of downwards. So you'll find a lot more of the sort of advanced snorkels will be designed to be fit on your left-hand side. And that's purely because as scuba divers, our regulator comes over the right-hand side. So the final sort of section and feature of a snorkel is the trap and the purge valve down at the bottom. So this is much more obvious on the Mares snorkel. So these ones, you'll notice that you have this massive section down at the bottom of the snorkel. So you could get rid of that and you'd have a very simple airway. You could still breathe through that. The only downside to that is if any water gets into the snorkel, it's very close to your mouth. So they've added this little water trap, which any water that gets into the snorkel naturally goes away from the mouthpiece, so you still get a clean sort of airway. So even if you do get a small amount of water in the snorkel, you can still breathe past it, you still have a clear airway. And every time that you exhale, instead of having to blow the water out of the top of the snorkel throughout its entire length, it just comes out of this one-way purge valve down at the bottom. So any water, when you exhale, gets pushed out of the bottom and that clears it. As soon as you breathe in, that closes that valve. The water pressure itself will keep that valve closed, and then you breathe in nice, clean, fresh air. The only thing that you have to do is make sure that that valve doesn't have any kind of debris underneath it. Sometimes you get sand underneath it if you're diving off a beach. Just keep it nice and clean and make sure that that's so nice and flush, and you'll have a nice dry breath. So to summarize, lots of different features. You're really looking at the top of the snorkel keep, the main sort of body, the tube of the snorkel, whether it's rigid or flexible, that lower sort of bend in the angle. Ideally, you want a bit of flexibility so it's more comfortable and more practical, especially if you're scuba diving, and a lower purge valve is really handy unless you're looking to do in-water rescue breaths as a rescue diver. But hey, if your airway control isn't that great, you want to keep water away and out of your mouth, then go for all of those purge valves and that will keep as much water out of the snorkel as possible. Thanks for watching and safe diving.
We are an online dive store serving the UK and the world for all your diving equipment needs. So why not visit us at simplyscuba.com or click the box on your screen.